So nobody played with colors today. Okay, we are live on Facebook now.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's
Okay.
I think we can begin.
Man, let me know when you want me to begin.
Yeah, I think we can start, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, live streaming.
Okay. Great. So, good evening, everybody. The aesthetics of white cube space, however contested, still holds true for contemplation of art. I believe that. However, the recontextualization of exhibitions on VR spaces with diverse artists allowed us to be in a dialectical mode, moving away from the Derridian notion of physical domicile of art. We chose to stay relevant in the challenging times of pandemic and lockdown. The Untitled series was initiated in the midst of COVID-19 in the May of 2020 with the aim of focusing on variables of what we can do rather than what we can't. Every edition brought together a group of young artists whose practice respond to the manifold effects of political, social, ecological, and personal space. The selection of the artist was based on the notion of each of them magnifying their truth, their past conditioning, their memories, and the performative approach to their work. Each artwork is suffused with documenting and archiving the present and the now. Every edition of the Untitled series was followed by a webinar with a facilitator, Nikhil Purohit, in conversation with the artist that triggered them to share the archaeologies of their mind and the act of making. And here we are on the 10th edition and the last edition of the Untitled series. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Over to you, Meher.
So yeah, I would just like to introduce Nikhil, who's present with us and who's always been with us since the beginning of the webinar series that we try to incorporate in the Untitled series. And thank you, Nikhil, for doing this with us. And Nikhil Purohit, just a brief introduction for him, is a visual arts professional working in the field of humanities, actively contributing to the cultural exchanges through art administration. He has studied painting as a core subject and pursued ancient Indian history to understand the socio-cultural fabric of ancient civilization. Nikhil works with organizations and individuals to document their art practices, engages with art education to nurture and promote artistic endeavors. Um, He's based in Mumbai. His practice connects him with the Mohile Parikh Center for Visual Arts, the Indian Contemporary Art Journal, Amity School of Fine Arts, and similar pedagogical platforms. He heads the initiative Fande, dedicated to documenting the arts to promote heritage and its management. So we welcome you, Nikhil, and I think we can begin with our webinar
Yes.
session.
Yes, thank you, Meher. It has been a wonderful journey to connect with a diverse set of artists. Like uh, till yesterday, it's the ninth session, and today we are on the concluding. Yet, uh, would be the one of the best engagements with again diverse pedagogical artists on the panel today. We have all witnessed how the year has treated us, and we are again in a cyclical fashion, and we are more or less, it feels that we haven't moved ahead at all. Yet moving ahead is part of the human life, and as evolution insists us to keep coping with the situations, artists also in their own secluded regions, places, wherever, with whatever resources they have been working and consistently making art. registering their observations towards the things which are happening in their surroundings as well as part of their lives. So I welcome Meher, who has facilitated in bringing all these artists together for the Untitled 10 series, and to give an overview of how she brought in these set of artists. Especially, they all have different pedagogical backgrounds, and or rather, or right now they are pursuing different academic approaches as well. So that diversity is fascinating, and also regionally they are from different areas. So we will be looking at a very interesting mix of uh, locales as well as their visual approaches. So I invite Meher to give us an overview of this, and then we can begin with the conversation with each artist.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thanks for that.
For
Also,
that, please have an introduction of Meher, please, Afreen.
Yes, ma'am. So I would like to formally introduce the curator and facilitator of Untitled 10, Meher Afroz Wahid. Wahid is an intermediate artist based in Mumbai, currently residing in Dubai, UAE. Her practice speaks about the transformational and transitional aspects of culture and its effects on the psychology, physical, and daily life of human beings. She executes her thought through performances, videos, installations, sculptures, and texts that stand as a witness of her works. Wahid completed her master's in humanities and social science from Shiv Nadar University in Delhi. She completed her bachelor's in master's from Sir J. School of Art, Mumbai, India. She has been on artist residence at Futur Foundation in Rapidville, Jona, Switzerland, and at Kara Kosh in Tehran, Iran. Her debut solo was held in Threshold at Art Gallery in 2019 Delhi. She has been a part of several group shows, and her recent one is with Gilhari Arts Foundation, curated by Urja Garg, titled Responses to Memory. Thank you.
thank you for that brief introduction, Afreen. That was lovely to have. Also, thank you, Nikhil, for addressing this to me. Also, thank you, Priyashi, for initiating this, facilitating the last exhibition for Untitled. I was just basically trying to stamp out from how I have been practicing, as I'm not professionally a facilitator or a curator. So I was only trying to like extend out the kind of concerns that I come from, and I wanted to like collect artists, who are responding from the same space, more or less. But even so, when I was doing that, I was challenged by a lot of notions of the same ideologies that I try to follow, or maybe where the place where I respond from, which is a very personal, intimate space that I try to address things from, and I try to look into the kind of experiences that I go through. And it was like, even though when I'm saying this, I know it is a vast area to look into. Yeah, I've just tried to put a few words together to share a different, like a very diverse kind of practices which can come into the same thought process. And it was really interesting to find these artists, because they are all also addressing from very like you correctly said, Nikhil, they are all working in different kind of mediums, different kind of thought processes. And uh, like where my interest lies is majorly, how you expand from the personal space, and how you like put these thoughts out into a space where you can collectively talk about things which are personal. But I don't think personal is only like it should be criticized in a way because it is too personal, but because I think that is the space where one can speak from. So yeah, I think this was the whole ideology to get these artists together, and I had a wonderful time. Thank you all for participating and coming together on this with me. And that's it, I think, Nikhil.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meher. Yeah. To begin with the conversations, we will be asking questions to each individual panelist here. And with a round of the questions, we'll be eventually opening it out to the audiences, who may feel free to ask questions or post your questions in the chat box. To begin with, Akshata, who has a graduation from the textile department. Textile history in any culture has a significant role, and I perhaps it becomes more interesting when you look at a colonial institute where she studied, and breaking away from the certain set of ideas of utility based practice. She moves on to using the medium as a tool for expression. So I would ask Akshata that how do you respond to this idea of using textile, especially when the material demands a lot of perseverance as well as time as a constraint, where as opposed to the pictorial ease when you think of a canvas or a two-dimensional surface, it becomes instantaneous responses as a medium. So how do you engage with this material, and what are the aspects you personally would like to share as part of your process?
Thank you, Nikhil. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Akshita Mukashi, and Nikhil has already given my introduction. So, like when I was in JJ, and I was, there was this environment which was so inspiring, the nature and also the painting department. So, being into the art and craft department, I felt a need to explore beyond it and not just stick to the academic prints or woven samples. And I wanted to find a medium of my own. And from the very beginning, like from school, I loved to paint. So when I went to JJ, I used to paint a lot, like make landscapes and explore I was inspired by the impressionist painters like Monet and William Turner. So all of this was in my mind, and in second year when I was introduced to tapestry weaving, which is a form of woven painting, I felt the idea very like fascinating, that you could translate a painting into something which is structural and does not just stick on the surface. So when I started with this, the thought was just to make a painting, but in a different kind of medium. So, but when I in the process, like when I started using it and exploring more, I found it, obviously it is very time consuming. But the examples that I looked into history, like medieval tapestry weavings of Europe, or even Indian rugs and carpets, or Persian carpets for that matter, I found it very intriguing that artisans or weavers would spend years for making something commissioned, and palaces and courts would be adorned with these. So this, like, I really wanted to explore this, and as and when I started translating the painting into a textile, I found the process very meditative, relaxing, and something where I could communicate with my own self. So, and so traditional tapestries were always, they were woven in a right angle, like right angle. So the wefts, that is the threads that you put in the structure, are always perpendicular. But I wanted to explore it more, and in a very organic way that I used to paint. So I experimented with the layers and wanted to add depth, shadows, like I would paint the landscapes, and that's how it started connected with me even more.
Right. So there is also a reference to the Tana Bana of memories, the weave of memories in your work. Uh, Generally, when we speak about textiles, and especially clothing. When we think of range of clothing brings us with different memories. In your case, you are referring to certain objects from your personal memory of your grandfather. So, could you please elaborate on how that eventually becomes part of your pictorial textiles?
Mhm. So this artwork is called Souvenir, and as the
Mhm.
name suggests, it's a present or something as a reminder um, after somebody passes away. So there was this personal event and experience which I experienced very closely, like the death of my grandfather, and for a long period of time, all those memories and thoughts were just there in my mind, and I have been like watching him, observing what he does on a daily basis, objects he uses, and daily rituals, or all of that. So he started sketching these out, and even like collected a whole lot of sketches of figurative sketches I did of him, and then these were all just there in my mind. And simultaneously I was also looking at how nature works, like questioning, the life cycle, and everything, how it goes back to nature. So I looked into this particular form of a chrysanthemum, and looked into the symbolism of a chrysanthemum. So in Ayurveda, it's also associated with the heart chakra, and so you focus on this flower to, make your heart blossom, and it's a symbolic form for joy blossoming, as well as in the Western context, it's also a death flower. So I kind of associated that along with all this layered thoughts in my mind, the objects. There was the bed that he used to sleep on. So I kind of brought them together and translated the painting again.
So, how did your viewers, or maybe the first set of people, your family members, responded to the very work of yours?
It was very emotional.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think actually it was very personal for me, so I did not share this with anybody really. And later on, I just submitted this artwork for Prafulla Dhanukkar Foundation, and I won a gold medal there. And that's where my parents came to know actually. And then I explained to them what it was about. So they were also very proud and emotional at the same time.
Mm. So, looking at the range of practices about textiles, there are so many histories of warping and wefting.
Mhm.
The Panjadari is one of the references it immediately comes to my mind here, where using a panja as a tool and weaving it comes together.
Yeah.
So there are niche cultures, small craft clusters which exist throughout the country. So, what is the direction of your work in as opposed to the fabric of utility-based
Mhm.
use of the medium? So, is it a departure, or how do you perceive your direction to be?
So I see it more as a traditional technique, but using it in a contemporary context, or exploring it as an artist, um, because there are all these craft clusters and traditions, and in fact, I'm working with them currently, and I know what they are going through. And at some places, there are just few families, or just that last family which is practicing it, and it
Hmm.
might just the craft might die away. So I think I want to stick to this medium, and go out and reach to people, saying that weaving is something which shouldn't be left behind. It's a technique which has been used since ancient times, and I look at it as an artistic contemporary perspective.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you, Akshita. So it had a range of thoughts we came across through your work. I direct my next question to Avinash Bishnurkar. So, who has a strong sculptural set of work to share with us? Uh, and again, yesterday we had this common line or common thread of childhood memories to refer. And here, Avinash's work bring the same thought back to the platform. So, Avinash, could you please elaborate on what is this idea of childhood you are referring to, and why and how do you make it a point to involve the viewers through your work? Like you insist on a certain engagement with the viewers. So, what is the idea behind that?
थैंक यू। मैं मतलब मेरा काम इस तरीके से, मैं एक इनोसेंस और फ्रीडम लेके काम कर रहा हूँ, जिसमें
जी।
मोस्टली जो चाइल्डहुड मेमोरीज है उसको एक्सप्रेस करने की मैं कोशिश कर रहा हूँ। मतलब जो हर एक के लाइफ में बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट रहती है। मतलब जैसे वो याद करे तो एकदम से खुशी आ जाती है, तो उस तरीके से मैं मेरा काम में मोस्टली जो इमेजेस डालता हूँ उस तरीके से डाल रहा हूँ। अगर ये काम की जो बात करें जो स्क्रीन पे है, तो ये पहले एक्चुअली ये हम 3 दोस्त है जो कि मतलब मेरा मेमोरी है, लेकिन ये हर किसी का हो सकता है। तो इसके ऊपर जो ड्राइंग्स की है बाद में वो व्यूअर्स ने किए। तो मैं मोस्टली मेरे काम में व्यूअर्स मेरे काम में पार्टिसिपेट करे ऐसा मैं चाहता हूँ हमेशा, क्योंकि मतलब जब वो इंटरेक्शन होता है तभी काम कुछ क्योंकि मैं अगर खुद से वहाँ पे कलर करने जाऊँ तो कहीं ना कहीं कॉन्शियसनेस आ जाएगा और वो जो फ्रीडम मैं एक्सप्रेस करना चाहता हूँ वो नहीं आ पाएगी। इसलिए मोस्टली मैं व्यूअर्स को पार्टिसिपेट करना चाहता हूँ। और ये काम का आइडिया बेसिकली ऐसा था कि जब छोटे बच्चे जो घर में रहते हैं तो वहाँ पे वो घर की दीवारें हमेशा कलरफुल ही रहती है। तो मैं मतलब वहाँ से ये आइडिया कि क्यों ना मतलब गैलरी पे एक बड़े लोग भी मतलब ये सब जीने के ख्वाहिश रखते हैं कि हाँ मतलब इस तरीके से हम भी करें, कहीं ना कहीं कोई जज करने वाला नहीं हो, लेकिन वो सब जो मन का है वो पूरा लिखे, या मतलब जैसे चाइल्ड में करते थे वो उस तरीके से। इस तरीके से मोस्टली मैं काम करता हूँ।
तो इसमें जो मीडियम अलग अलग चुन रहे हो कि जहाँ पे टेराकोटा का इस्तेमाल भी है, उसको फायर भी आप कर रहे हो, तो ये वेरिएशन एक ही इमेजरी के अलग अलग तरीके से आप प्रेजेंट कर रहे हो। सो ये डुप्लीकेशन के बारे में आपका क्या ख्याल है?
एक्चुअली ये जो है मैं सिरेमिक इसमें इसलिए यूज किया क्योंकि वो बहुत फ्रेजाइल रहता है, उसको काफी तरीके से संभालना पड़ता है। और चाइल्डहुड मेमोरी जो अपनी मेमोरीज रहती है कहीं ना कहीं मैं उससे कनेक्ट कर रहा हूँ कि वो भी काफी फ्रेजाइल रहती है। मतलब काफी यादें कुछ ऐसा रहता है जो उससे हम कनेक्ट हो तो एकदम से स्माइल आ जाए या उस तरीके से। तो मैं मीडियम भी उस तरीके से कनेक्ट करता हूँ कि जैसे कलर्स है तो एक कलरफुल देखे तो मतलब उस तरीके से मैं मोस्टली मीडियम भी चूज कर रहा हूँ।
ओके। सो आपके जो मेमोरीज की बात आप कर रहे हैं, तो उसके अभी ये तो एक बचपन का मेमोरीज हो गया, तो आपके ओवरऑल काम में इसका रोल किस तरह से है और किस तरह के मेमोरीज को आप ढालना चाहते हो? और स्पेशली जब हम बैकग्राउंड में जो पेपर या कैनवस सरफेस जिसमें व्यूअर्स ने इंटरेक्ट किया हुआ है, तो उनका ऑब्जर्वेशन आपका कैसा रहा कि उन्होंने क्या वहाँ पे एक्सप्रेस करने की कोशिश की?
मैंने मोस्टली देखा कि जब ये शो में हो रहा था तो मैंने खाली बोर्ड लगाया था, तो जो भी बड़े लोग भी आ रहे थे तो कुछ ऐसा बहुत ऐसा कॉन्शियस होके ड्राइंग नहीं कर रहे थे, काफी एकदम फ्रीडम से कर रहे और मतलब फुल वो मजा कर रहे थे। एक्चुअली वो एक दूसरे के साथ बात करके देखो मैंने ये निकाला या ये ऐसा किया, तो उस तरीके से भर गया। और काफी बार तो ऐसा हुआ कि पहले कोई करके गया तो उसको कंटिन्यू करके किसी ने और बना दिया, तो वो काफी प्लेफुल था। जैसे ये स्कल्पचर भी मैंने रखा तो क्योंकि मैं कलर करता तो बेसिकली हाँ मतलब मुंह इस तरीके से होता है, होठ इस तरीके से होता है, तो उस तरीके से कलर करता। लेकिन जब लोगों ने किया तो काफी अच्छे से प्ले किया कि हाँ मतलब किसी ने वो सिगरेट जैसा वो क्रेयॉन्स डाल दिए या किसी ने ऐसा मेल्ट करके पूरा कलर डाल दिया। तो मतलब वो मल्टीपल व्यू मिले कि काफी लोग हर एक मतलब किस तरीके से देखता है। तो काफी मजेदार चीज हुई थी वो जो इंटरेक्शन था, तो उस तरीके से। और
Right.
बाद में जो मुझे प्रोडक्ट मिला, जो मैंने वाइट रखा था और जो बाद में कलर होके जो मिला, वो काफी मजेदार लगा मुझे।
Right.
तो आगे भी मतलब कई सारे काम मैं इस तरीके से, और मेरी जो फिगर्स जो मैं मेमोरीज लेता हूँ वो इस तरीके से कि जैसे मतलब देखे बराबर वो पास से कनेक्ट हो जाए, उस तरीके से मैं मेमोरीज ले रहा हूँ। मतलब वो जो फिगर्स है, और मोस्टली फिगर्स इसलिए, ह्यूमन फिगर्स इसलिए कि वो जल्दी इंटरेक्ट करती है लोगों के साथ, तो इसलिए।
Right. Right. Okay. Yes. कुछ सवाल आ रहे हैं, धीरे धीरे हम एक राउंड सब आर्टिस्ट के साथ बातचीत हो जाए तो फिर हम सवाल लेंगे। So I direct my next question to Bazik. I find his role and his work process very interesting in terms of somewhere I tend to compare him with a court painter who is also a diplomat and also trying to figure out and make a statement through his work, negotiate with different realities at the same time. As we can see, he has a very diverse profile here, and he's also pursuing his PhD uh, in visual studies, and that itself makes him his regionality and the way he refers to landscapes even more layered. Besides the usual academic approach he has in his work, the use of medium and tools, the contextualizing makes it much more layered, and I think that articulation in itself is a very crucial part of his work. Where I think literature, like when we start going through his works, there is a strong reference of literary imagination. Uh, when we can kind of differentiate between a visual reference as well as a verbal visualization. So both these elements are going hand in hand in his work. And I would urge Bazik to elaborate on this particular approach, like where he contextualizes his work, whereas his process more or less goes as a typical studio painter.
Hi everyone. Hi Nikhil. Where do I start? I mean, of course, a lot of my practice draws from the awareness of my location. I mean, coming from a place from Mizoram, which has long been a subject of an ethnographic gaze. A lot of my work, especially with as you mentioned, takes on the notion of literature. I guess it's one of the things that I'm looking at is reclaiming agency, because of course, like when we look at the Republic as in our Republic, Northeast as a place, as a location, has often been misunderstood, which leads to lots of racial discrimination, stereotypes, and so on. So lend this notion of looking or challenging the notion of the gaze that comes from a cultural outsider. So what does it mean as an artist from that location to turn the lens outside and speak for oneself? So I'm really trying to bring in this set of questions which resulted in kind of a visual practice that tries to move away from usual, mode of representation. Yeah.
Right, right. So, as I in our conversation, I had mentioned about this, like uh, contextualizing is the core of contemporary practice today. So, the way we
Mhm.
start looking at your landscapes, even though they look like any usual academic landscape, but the moment they are contextualized, there are
Mhm.
a range of meanings come out as a part of it. So,
Mhm.
how do you see this aesthetics at play?
Yeah, that's a really important question, especially with regard to my work. So some of the landscapes that I the one that you see right now, some of even the title is crucial in my painting. So some of the works are titled as "Don't You Underestimate Me," and also the medium. Some of the works that I did, I experimented with black on black, where I sketch out the landscapes on a black paper with a pencil. So from one perspective, it really gets dark. You can't really see anything. But then when you change your perspective and when the light falls in, you start to see the picture. So this is kind of like a conceptual tool to question the kind of um, how you look at things, just inviting people to to change their perspective so that you see the bigger picture. And again, like especially when it comes to visual representation or art practice in general, um, there's this notion that art speaks for itself, which I see, and as Lippard puts it, artists from the subaltern are often brainwashed by the notion that art speaks for itself. So in a way that decontextualize their works and also silencing their voices. So, this is really important because of course you need to, contextualize and also bring in a discourse so that, you reclaim agency and you start speaking for, from your location and like from your point of view.
Right. So while we are looking at this, as your works as an identity or a quest or a sort of hunt for creating an identity, right? What is the significance of portraits? Like they have a photographic identity, like an ID card photographs. At the same time, when you collage them and then put them together, then they start bringing in different layers of the flux what you're referring to, especially the kind of violent and difficult fluxes in your regional reference. So how do you quote these portraits?
Um, I wouldn't say that like my work strives to, my work is, strives for a search for an identity. But of course, like identity in itself as a question, as a conceptual philosophical question, I deal a lot about, identity as self-identity, whether it's self-identity, ethnic identity, or national identity. These are the questions that, that keeps coming back. And of course, like portraits, when we think about portraits, and of course, like identification, our face is often is a certificate of validation, and naturally, I love working with portraits, and especially with there's a certain distinction. I mean, there's a certain mystery to to the human face, like portrait, and I mean that. And I, of course, I experimented a lot with it, and then of course it's grew into a more conceptual and more intimate notion of understanding oneself, and also to which branches out into other areas of inquiries. So if you just go back to the previous slide, even this one is a portrait of Nido Taniam, who was murdered in New Delhi. He was a Northeasterner. And of course, here I worked with the notion of the statist rhetoric, unity in diversity, and like, is this really the reality? And then I tried to, sort of like put up all these kind of like random portraits that I, see around colleges, and, see if they make up like one unified portraits. Yeah, but then like, especially on self-portraits, I think like when I first started off, I don't really know how and like why I did this. But then, yeah, again, like literature especially helps me out in retrospect, like especially when, the conceptual, node, or like which became a part of the work, the identity, the poem, is also a reflection of like what I was doing. And it all makes sense together. Yeah, right. I mean, it's really difficult to articulate all of this. Yeah.
No, certainly. Like, yeah, but it's interesting. Like the way you score your academic ventures. Yeah, and the moment you are conscious and aware of your own positioning, either being belonging to a certain region, or trying to communicate these narratives to people, and that itself makes the work even more meaningful. And I think that's the beauty of your the overall processes you have chosen, and the way you selectively look at certain images. So even though they may not look like a very exclusively or differently painted imagery, but the moment they are contextualized, they start bringing in layers of meanings, and that's the beauty of your imagery, what I look at. Yeah, thank you, Bazik, for that. And I lead my next question now. Speaking about identities, we all source our identities from the cultures we belong to, the type of memories which get converted into certain situations, then into mythologies, fascinating mythologies which become a kind of a fancy to dwell on, or a niche area where we can live our hideout from the realities of life. I bring my next question to Darshan here, who has his strong practice in the academies of JJ, and later on moves away from that, the academics, the hardcore typical academics, and eventually starts moving around with a different set of ideologies, which is through his learning of mythologies and comparative mythology as a academic learning. That mixture or that harmony which he sets out itself brings out a new idiom to understand and look at. So, Darshan, what is this idea, and how are you looking at this amalgamation of contemporary interpretation of the mythologies, which has been either present through medieval or ancient eras?
या सही है. सो मैं हिंदी में बात करूंगा क्योंकि
जरूर.
पढ़ता हिंदी में हूँ, तो बात करने में सही जाएगा. सो ये चीजों का जो शुरुआत है ना, ये ज्यादा मेटाफोर से रिलेटेड है. मतलब जो भी मिथ है, जो भी स्टोरीज है, जो भी फोकटेल है, सोसाइटी है, हमारे इडियम्स है, वाक प्रचार जिन्हें हम कहते हैं, वो सारे मेटाफोर से रिलेटेड है. दो मुहा इंसान है, रियलिटी में तो नहीं होते हैं पर है. तो ये जो इंटरेस्टिंग कुछ तो ऐसे फ्यूज्ड कुछ तो एक हम बोल जाता है, पर अगर उसको ड्रॉ करेंगे तो कुछ तो मैं एक विजुअल्स क्रिएट करने लगा ऐसे. और ऐसे इन मेटाफर्स को एक्सप्लोर करके मैं मिथ्स में घुस गया, और मिथ्स में तो बहुत लेयर्स है, मेटाफर्स के बहुत मीनिंग्स है, एकदम मल्टी लेयर है मिथोलॉजी, एक स्टोरी पूरा। तो सिर्फ अपना कल्चर नहीं, तो बाहर का ग्रीक है, इजिप्ट है, आइसलैंडिक है, तो ये सारी चीजों में एक्सप्लोर करते करते मैं इतना घुस गया कि इन चीजों को एक साथ लेके अभी मैं मेरा खुद का काम एक्सप्लोर कर रहा हूँ, ऐसा है।
ओके ओके, राइट। तो ये सब करते वक्त एक किस्म का एक अब्सर्डिटी आपके काम में नजर आता है जब
हम्म।
डिस्टॉर्शन की बात आती है, या फिर नए सिरे से पुराने माइथोलॉजीज को इंटरप्रेट करने की बात आती है।
हम्म।
तो एक किस्म का क्या बोलेंगे हम, विक्षिप्तता या फिर
हम्म।
अब्सर्डिटी जो है वो आपके काम में आता है। तो वो क्यों आता है और किस वजह से आता है?
हम्म। एक तो एक तो है कि मिथ्स डायरेक्टली चीजें डायरेक्टली हमें बताती नहीं है,
हम्म
वो बहुत इनडायरेक्टली चीजें हम हमारे तक पहुंचाती है। तो अगर मैं एक चीज को डायरेक्टली ड्रॉ और पेंट कर रहा हूँ तो वो बहुत डायरेक्ट इम्पैक्ट है मेरे में, वो मैं छुपा नहीं पा रहा हूँ क्योंकि मैं वो स्टडी करके काम कर रहा हूँ बेसिकली।
I think it's stuck for a while. Let's
Hello.
just wait for a few moments. Yeah. Okay, I think we
Yeah,
have.
I thought it was problem with my internet.
No, I think a couple
Okay.
has been. Darshan, are you still with us? Okay, I think he will take some time to come back.
Okay. Yeah, we will come to his point little later. We can proceed with further questions. Yeah, so we have Mukta with us, Mukta Vaidya, uh, whose work again, current works and the set of works she has been doing in recent past. There is a major transition which one can see. So I would like to ask Mukta, like, how do you begin with the modernist approach? Again, this has to do with the pedagogical references or origins you come from at JJ, and eventually now the way you are transiting into a different expression process. So, if you could elaborate on that process and what is it urges you to move away or bring in a new aspect into your work. Mukta, you need to unmute yourself, please.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah, like you said, the forms that I've been using are not what you actually see in reality. You know, there is a slight of distortion and change in perspective. And sorry.
Yes.
Yes, I think she.
I think they're giving each other a chance. There's
Right. Darshan, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay. Let's see for a couple of seconds if Mukta reconnects.
Yes, sir. Sorry,
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
there's
please
slight
continue.
network issue going on.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, like you said, sorry, I just got lost from the entire question that you asked. Could you
Yeah,
repeat
the
it?
question of what is the transition about? How do you transit, and what urges you to transit from the modernist phase and what you're working continue to work right now?
Yeah, so you know, all this basically still life, you know, right from in JJ School of Art, it is like a tradition or an academic subject. And then after, when you like when we that in bachelor's later, we were asked to, we could twerk in a little and try to put in a little bit of concept, and that's where I started doing it. So basically, it's a memory from my childhood, where here in Mumbai, you get these kitchen set which is made from wood, and that's where I saw it, and then I started doing it accordingly. And whereas talking of a little bit of the form was part of the practice which I was doing while doing then, and then simultaneously I started working on the composition similarly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could elaborate
So
on
today,
yeah, how you're
today,
moving.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So today, my approach is a little bit towards what is happening around me, especially how the impact is, like you could say pollution, or how uh, um, sorry, can't remember words, but how in general life around me is today. So I've been using objects from daily use, and then putting them together is to how they are, how they would affect, uh, sorry, not affect, but
So
just
in a way, can we say that the studio practice is opening up and becoming more
Mhm.
extrovert? Is it
in
that?
in in what sense?
Yeah. So like the studio practice where you're looking at objects in a more formal way.
Mhm.
Yeah, that setup is slowly moving out and becoming more of building a consciousness of awareness towards your surrounding. Would you call that the case?
Yeah, because these objects are not traditionally placed right in front of me. They are part, the placement is imaginary, or being formed on paper through different sketches. So you could say that.
Okay, okay, right. Thank you, Mukta. Certainly, there are more questions, and we'll just finish the round of question answers and then come back to you. Yeah. So we move towards Rahul Kamalasan here, uh, who has again absurdity is again a common element in his work, but at the same time he deals with spatial constraints in a very interesting manner. The way he uh, scans his works and puts into animation and then build into a virtual space, that itself brings a very different surreal aspect to his work. So Rahul, would you speak about that uh, shift happening in your work, like how there is a pictorial shift as well when you are actually making the drawings, uh, illustrating them, and then bringing it to a digital version and giving it a different life altogether through auditory and visual senses enhancements as well.
Um, yeah, I mean the pictorial shift is there,
Hmm.
but it's not a very deliberate attempt. It's just very natural. It's probably the requirement of the medium. Also, animation by itself is a very labor-intensive process, as I have to draw many frames.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the visual translation which happens, it's more like a balance which I'm trying to strike between doing too much work and also, I mean, the kind of sketches that I make or the observations that I make, if I have to very directly translate them into animation, it would take a lot of time. So
Hmm. Hmm.
what I do is I look for a very gestural means of depicting those ideas which I pick from my daily life, whatever I encounter around me, and the result is that it's a very natural translation, and I'm not like very deliberately trying to pick a different imagery for my animation and
Right.
whatever I have for my sketches. They're not, I mean, it's not a deliberate attempt. It happens because, over a period of time, I realized that I have to paint also, and also I have to animate. And it's a very compulsive need to find some sort of narrative.
Hmm.
So the narrative is the common ground between the sketches and the drawings which I pick from my surroundings, and these translate into a certain kind of story element when I put them into an animated form. Not all of them, like Microwave Reheat was more around a conversation which normally happens when we are warming up our food around the microwave. So it was a very natural impulse to do that. So yeah, and the process also is, it suits my need, because when I paint these objects on paper, it still retains my interest in tradition, the traditional way I've been, taught my art. And then when I come back into computer, these are kept as backgrounds, or certain elements are definitely kept as backgrounds, and I add the digital characters on top of them. So it's a nice balance for me, where I can draw and paint and also animate at the same time. So yeah, and
Right.
yeah.
So it has a very interesting quirky feel to it. So how do you uh, associate with it? And of course, it is in continuation to your pictorial sense which you are making in your drawings, and then the same continues in your animation as well. I think before you respond, I would ask Meher to share a video of video work of Rahul here, so that we can discuss it further.
Just give me a moment.
Sure, sure. Yes, in the meanwhile, there have been some questions directed here as well. And besides that, the audience members also can post your questions. Once Rahul and Darshan are done with their speeches, we will take up the questions.
Hmm.
Yeah, would you mind playing it again, please?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Meher. So, Rahul, there is an interesting use of anthropomorphic forms as well, right? So, there are geometric patterns which are subtly coming in and going out of the images. So, how would you bring these associations? What is this kind of affinity towards absurdity?
Um, I mean, the the image which you saw in the center, which was, moving into different images itself. I mean, that is not necessarily. I'm trying to pinpoint on absurdity as such.
Mhm.
More like I make a general reference to something which is uh, happening outside of me, but it's not a very direct representation. It's more like uh, a way to connect with my sentiments and my feelings towards a certain aspect of what's happening around me. So the images by themselves are pretty automatic. The little character which comes up in the middle, if I have to define it, what it is, it will be very difficult for me. It's more like the movement suggests a lot. It's like if you have to put those images as slides, like one by one, it will not make sense. But the movement which I put into them, that adds life to it, and that conveys a certain powerful gesture for me. So which again is the quality of animation. It relies entirely on movement, movement which conveys your mood. The pacing of the object conveys the mood, the idea. So it's an amalgamation of the movement and the images that come together. So
Right.
I don't know if it's absurd to look at it, because I mean, probably you as an outsider has pointed this out as
Mhm.
absurd to me. When I sit down to work, I don't prefix a idea. I don't start out with a very clear cut notion of an idea, but I do have a feeling, a vague feeling, which I approach by you know tackling it on the fly. Like when I put out the colors, the paints, and the objects start taking shape, it guides me on its own. And from there I follow the impulse, what it is trying to tell me, and that is a very natural process. So there's no preconceived guidance which is happening.
Right, right.
I don't know if
No, yeah, of course, of course. But it's a very fascinating thing for me. Especially it resonates with the works of Neil Gaiman here. The way we look at the dark comics, or the kind of storytelling which is happening, which is not the typical Pixar or Disney kind of animations which is out there, uh, or a Sin City reference which comes to your work. Like there are snippets of these dark references.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
Gaiman
yeah.
and Frank Miller, they do circle around me, because I have been a comic uh, aficionado for a very long
Hmm, hmm,
time.
hmm,
So
hmm.
it does reflect. But these works are like the Sisyphus malfunctioning code is more referring to the the concept of Albert Camus, when he says when he talks about existentialism, when he says the moment when God is removed from the equation, and man realizes there's no God and he's all by himself.
Hmm, hmm,
And it's a moment of extreme desperation, but also a moment of extreme liberation, because
hmm.
when you realize you're all by yourself, you have to fend for yourself, you have to help yourself. And that existentialism is a guiding notion in in this particular work. And maybe if you refer to Neil Gaiman and Sands of Time, and
Hmm.
even Frank Miller, even though they have a very commercial, Frank Miller, I would say, has a very commercial approach, but Neil Gaiman has a very subtle way of tackling these uh, fine questions, subtle questions. And there is a crucial story play which is happening. So that probably can be a common line. But not necessarily Neil Gaiman. Yeah, it's more like my own idea, which I float around while I'm sketching, while I'm drawing. I mean, this slide which you look
Hmm.
right now, this is where I actually formulate all my characters and what it is guiding me or what it is telling me. It's a very personal reference to my brother, who has a certain handicap, and uh, he does not do much except for sitting and watching the television. And that was the prompt for this piece. When I
Hmm, hmm.
started this piece, it was woven around his limitation. But it's also Sisyphus is that mythical character who rolls up a boulder up the hill, and then the boulder falls down and he starts all over again, but he does not complain. I mean, he knows it's his fate, it's his destiny. So that is exactly how I feel when I look at my brother also. He does not respond to anything but to the television. He starts,
Hmm,
and then he
hmm.
starts all over again. So in some way I feel he is that Sisyphus for me. So that was the idea for this piece, and that's how I came up with the idea. But it's interesting to know that you find Neil Gaiman and Frank Miller in these. Maybe, yeah. I mean,
Right.
I didn't know that someone from outside, when looking at it, had this kind of a perspective on my work.
Great, great. Glad to hear that. Yeah, so at this point, I would ask Darshan to continue with his elaboration. And then, yeah, so there is one more question, a common question to all of you. So once Darshan completes, then we can take it up.
Yes.
Yes, Darshan.
थोड़ा रिवाइज मारते हैं.
Sure, sure. So, yeah, so आपका जो माइथोलॉजी का जो एसोसिएशन है, एक तरह से एकेडमिक वर्क से शिफ्ट्स हो रहे हैं और उसमें भी एक तरीके के अजीबपन है जो हम देखते हैं, या फिर विक्षिप्तता भी है. तो वो किस वजह से आ रहा है, क्यों आ रहा है, और पिक्टोरियली उसको एलैबोरेट कैसे कर रहे हैं आप?
वो विक्षिप्तता है वो बेसिकली मे बी मुझे लगता है कि मुझे एक ड्राइंग में या पेंटिंग में सारी चीजें दिखानी होती है. मुझे सब कुछ दिखाना है, मुझे उसको एक्सप्रेसिव भी दिखाना है, मुझे उसका सारे कैरेक्टर्स उसमें डालने हैं, मुझे एक साथ सारी चीजें दिखानी है. इससे वो थोड़ा सा अपसर्ड होता है, थोड़ा सा ऐसा लगता है कि अरे बहुत एग्जैजरेट किया हुआ है, बहुत एक्स्ट्रा एक्स्ट्रा चीजें डाली हुई है. और ये सारी चीजें करने के लिए मे बी ये थोड़ा सा डिस्टॉर्टेड और ये थोड़ा सा ऐसा थोड़ा अलग अलग दिखने लगता है, क्योंकि मुझे सब दिखाना है उसमें. ये जो इमेज है अभी, ये इमेज में भी ये मैंने, हमारा आर्ट फाउंडेशन है जो हम लोग रन करते हैं, वहां पे पेंट किया हुआ है. तो वहां के वो विलेज के जो लेडीज थी, तो उनका वो पहराव एक अलग है, उनका रहने का एक स्टाइल अलग है, उसका लाइफस्टाइल अलग है, उनका एक रूटीन है अलग. और वो दिखाने के लिए वहां का सबसे अच्छा और सबसे ज्यादा बात करने वाली जो बूढ़ी आजी होती है ना, तो उनसे बातें करते हुए ऐसा लगा कि चलो यार, मुझे बड़ा पेंट करना ही है, तो क्या करना है मुझे पता नहीं, तो इनको ही पेंट कर देता हूँ. और वहां पे उनके गांव के आसपास पूरा एक ऑरेंज फ्लावर हर जगह पे. तो बेसिकली जो मेरे सराउंडिंग में है, जो मेरे आजू बाजू लोग रहते हैं, वही मेरा इंस्पिरेशन होते हैं मेरे ड्राइंग के लिए. कि हर एक का एक अलग स्टोरी रहता है, हर एक का एक अलग एक्सप्लेनेशन रहता है. तो ये सारी चीजें मुझे इंस्पायर करती रहती है हर बार. तो इसलिए मैं भी ये सारी चीजों की वजह से थोड़ा सा ये अलग दिखने लगता है.
भारतीय देव देवताओं की जब हम बात करते हैं, तो बहुत सारे ऐसे कैरेक्टर्स हैं माइथोलॉजी में जिनका सिर्फ हमें सुनने में आता है. जैसे कि हम हर रिलीजन के इमेजरी को हम जब देखते हैं, तो वो एक क्या बोलेंगे, विजुअल लर्निंग के तरह से आते हैं, और हर उस कॉन्टेक्चुअली अपने अपने रिलीजन में जो लोग हैं, वो उन नैरेटिव्स के आधार पर वो कैरेक्टर्स आइडेंटिफाई करना उनको आसान होता है. सो बट काफी सारे माइथोलॉजीज में काफी सारे कैरेक्टर्स ऐसे आते हैं जिनके विजुअल फॉर्म्स हमें कॉमनली नजर नहीं आते हैं. तो आपके काम में वैसे भी कैरेक्टर्स को रीविजुअलाइज करने का, या फिर आपके नजरिए से विजुअलाइज करने का जो प्रयास है, तो उसके बारे में आप क्या बताएंगे?
ये यार इतना कठिन नहीं है, ये बहुत सिंपल है. मतलब अगर मैं स्टोरी पढ़ता हूँ या फिर स्टोरी सुनता हूँ, वो कितना भी इमेजिनरी, कितना भी अलग, कितना भी दुनिया से बाहर कैरेक्टर हो, अगर वो विजुअलाइज होता है तो मैं ड्रॉ कर सकता हूँ. तो अगर नहीं हुआ है अब तक, तो मैं मेरे हिसाब से ड्रॉ करके देखता हूँ, मेरे अंडरस्टैंडिंग से पेंट ड्रॉ या पेंट करके देखता हूँ. तो
दर्शन, आपका आवाज फिर से जा रहा है.
ये बहुत सिंपल है और मुझे वो सिंपल रखने में बहुत इंटरेस्ट है.
बट जब आप ये बोलते हो दर्शन, जब आप ये बोलते हो कि ये सिंपल है और वो सिंपलिसिटी आप मेंटेन करना चाहते हो, बट आपके इमेजरी तो उलट कॉम्प्लेक्स होता जा रहा है, तो वो उस कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी को कैसे एड्रेस करेंगे आप?
सिंपल ये है कि उनका स्टोरी सिंपल है, उनका बात करने का तरीका या फिर उनका नरेशन सिंपल है, पर मुझे उनकी सारी चीजें एक साथ दिखानी है, तो मे बी वो कॉम्प्लेक्स होते जाता है, क्योंकि मुझे उनका स्टोरी भी बताना है, वो दिखते कैसे वो भी बताना है, उन्होंने क्या क्या किया वो भी बताना है. अभी ये जो डिस्प्ले हो रहा है ना वर्क, ये मैं कलिना यूनिवर्सिटी में कंपैरेटिव मिथोलॉजी का एडमिशन लेने माइग्रेशन सर्टिफिकेट के लिए गया था। तो वहाँ पे क्लर्क था, मे बी रिटायरमेंट के एज का होगा, एकदम झुरिया है, बूढ़ा सा है, गोल गोल चेहरा है, और उसने जो जो गाइड किया ना मुझे यार, मतलब नेक्स्ट लेवल गाइडेंस दिया उसने। सो मुझे लगा कि यार इसका ड्राइंग करता हूँ, तो मैं वहीं पे बैठ के थोड़ा ड्राइंग करके लिया और घर पे आके पेंटिंग कर दिया। उसका बहुत इम्प्रेशन था मुझ पे, एक अलग ही उसने इन्फ्लुएंस किया था, उसने बहुत हेल्प किया उसने।
Right, right. Yeah. So that's again
सामने जो लोग हैं, तो मेरे पे इम्प्रेशन आता है, उसको मैं ड्रॉ करता हूँ बस।
Right. Thank you, Darshan.
Yeah.
So yes, so we move on to a last common question from my end, and we'll open it out to the audience. हर किसी के काम में जैसे कि बाजिक के साथ बात करते हुए कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइजेशन की बात हुई, और ऑडियंस में से भी एक सवाल आया है, कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइजेशन जरूरी है क्या? जब भी हम अपने अपने नजरिए से कोई भी चीज देखना शुरू करते हैं, या फिर हम आंखें खोल के देखना शुरू करते ही हैं, the moment we start watching anything, we begin by contextualizing it. So even every word or anything that we just open our eyes to or open our ears to, the contextualization is so integral part of our upbringing or conditioning. There are fewer occasions where we are completely devoid of contextualizing, but I think conscious contextualization is required, where you are seeking for a right type of interpretation or a more balanced interpretation rather than a balanced interpretation. And I think that demands a recontextualization of things, to bring it through a different lens or a perspective and to be presented. And each of the artists are doing this uh, in their evolutionary phase, or the way they are looking at responding to their surroundings. But I would like to ask a question: while you are all of you are trying to do this within your own niche practices or very specific range of things you are dealing with, a common question which I tend to seek with diverse practices: who is your audience? Because that becomes a very boggling thing. Like, we live in times where digital media is accessible to almost everyone, yeah, whether directly or indirectly, and most of majority of the people are holding a digital device in their hands and perceiving whatever they intend to. Given that, when we speak about individual artists who are developing and resorting to their own individual idioms, so how do you build a connect with these audiences, or is there a specific audiences you seek? So that's a common question to everyone.
I mean, when you talk about the context, there's always a reason. I mean, जो भी मैं करता हूँ, तो उसके पीछे एक rationalization तो होता ही है कि why it is so, why is it happening to me. So it's more like a discovery of self. What is the meaning of all this that is happening around me? So it's like a journey where I'm trying to uh, find myself and understand myself. And these works are directed towards that understanding. And when I do such a personal work, I'm left with this question: who will be interested in that? So I mean, I've never kept an audience or a receiver in mind, especially after leaving college. There was this mindset which, when I was in college, the works have to be put up in a gallery, and there should be some kind of approval or accolades for that work. But ever since I left college and I've been grounded in my own situation, my house especially, uh, any of the works that I've produced is not kept in mind with certain audience. And it's a very liberating feeling. It's a feeling which gives me a lot of freedom when I know that no one is going to judge my work. Uh, I feel free to express myself to any extent. and I cannot compromise that freedom. Now when I look back, ये freedom मेरे लिए बहुत जरूरी है. So उस point of view से मैं कभी audience को मैंने ऐसा इतना importance नहीं दिया अपने इस work process के अंदर. जो भी आ रहा है वो मेरे आसपास के इंफॉर्मेशन से आ रहा है, तो मुझे तो पता भी नहीं है कि ये काम किसको इंटरेस्ट करेगा. मतलब मैंने कभी ऐसा सोचा ही नहीं है. So
Right.
that is my मतलब my point of view on this.
Okay. At this point, I recommend all the members connected here to go through Rahul's YouTube channel and look at his work. It's really fascinating how his small videos create a very different engagement, and probably they are kind of exhilarating to one's own domestic lives at the same time. So yes,
What's the name of the channel?
Rahul, please share the link in the
It's-
chat box. It will
okay,
be great.
I'll-
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah. The question is open.
To,
Yeah.
I would
Open
like to
to
answer that question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think like that's a really interesting question, because when we think about contemporary art practices, and also art writing in itself, there's a lot of debates around accessibility. You know, there has been lots of debates around you know, art writing and also contemporary art practices, and how it is, you know, not usually accessible to a lot of people who are uninitiated, right? So, you know, especially in the kind of you know, exhibition reviews that we see in newspapers, and the kind of language or academic, you know, it's not necessarily academic language, but also the kind of, you know, art writing that we see in, like, for example, eFlux, where there is lots of, you know, jargons and, you know, all this kind of complexities in it. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because of course, like, I can speak only for myself, and of course my practices are diverse, and I have specific audiences for very, you know, for different specific artworks in project, the projects that I have. So yeah, the kind of questions that I you know, keep asking myself is, you know, because of course I do like to work with, you know, this kind of like nuances, abstract and complexities and layerings. And sometimes I question myself whether, you know, this kind of rhetoric modes works for my audience, you know, because some of the things that I, you know, that I do is direct, like for example, like, of course, my work is very diverse, and I do exhibit in, you know, a lot of different places. So again, like, positioning and location plays a really important role here. So the kind of even the mediums that I use, or the kind of, you know, visual imagery that I do also changes depending on the audience that I have. So I mean, like, of course, I don't have a specific like audience for my practice, but like, what I wanted to say is that, like, I do have like very different specific of audiences in mind when I do specific works. Like, for example, sometimes it can be you know, academicians, sometimes it can be like general public, sometimes, you know, it's directed specifically at politicians sometimes, you know, some of the works that I do. Yeah. So yeah, it changes, but I do have you know, different audiences in mind when I do works. Yeah.
Right. Bazik, while going through your blog, somewhere I read that you do not represent the tradition. I forget the community name you have mentioned there. But then I sense a dilemma over there of identity. Like, you do not represent a tradition. Of course, if there is no pictorial tradition you are following in practice, but then isn't it a kind of a departure and at the same time a linkage to a newer perspective? Because you are both staying in Mizoram and also out of Mizoram, right? and that
Yeah.
itself sets out to be a different lineage, which may become a tradition, or perhaps if you start mapping the practices of all Northeastern artists together, maybe that you might be categorically seen as a part of a tradition. What do
Yeah,
you think
I mean,
about it?
that's a really interesting one, because again, like, paradox is such a beautiful thing, doesn't it? In itself. I mean, like, I think we need to delve deeper on the notion of like what really is tradition, because of course, like, I do follow a certain tradition, and then I try to depart from it, and then, you know, come back. You know, this kind of like movements and mobility is what I am really looking for. And, you know, like, I oppose the idea of a fixed tradition. Maybe that's what I'm really trying to refer to when I say tradition or identity. I do have a certain identity, but then, like, when it becomes imposed or a fixed identity, then I try to move away from it. But then, of course, you know, especially when it comes to identity, I cannot really negate the fact that I am from Mizoram, or the fact that I belong to India, or, you know, a certain, you know, identity that's given. But then the thing is that we try to question and try to reformulate or try to conceive new line of questioning, you know, from that. Yeah. I don't know if that suffice, but yeah, that's the thought that I have.
Right. So one may establish a domicile of someone, but in current times, as we look at the idea of identity, especially not in current times, but in general as well, any Indian cannot actually principally find a lineage to his or her own uh, identity or a position in the culture, because Satavahanas ruled in Maharashtra, and the majority of the Maharashtra, and almost 60% of the country. But I can't establish a lineage to them. And of course, this is a different debate about looking at documentation and histories. But identity is, of course, today we can't really set out a lineage. And yeah, so that's again, the multiplicity has to be taken into account as an idea.
Yeah, the multiplicities and the complexities are all that makes it more interesting, and of course, yeah.
Right. Yes. So yeah. If
I
yeah,
would
yes,
like to
Akshata.
add something to what Bazik said about accessibility. So, like, when I was, you know, experimenting with textile and the tapestry weaving, there was always this thought in my mind that art is so visual many times, and how can people who cannot see, visually impaired or blind people, how can they experience the same thing? Or like, they are more, people say that they have the other senses of them, theirs are more strong. So I wanted to like experiment, since textile and weaving is very tactile. It has those properties of, you know, texturing, layering, and it's very, yeah, it's very tactile. So in my master's, I was looking at this particular audience of visually impaired people, where I was not sticking to only visual tapestry, but including textures and kind of contrast weaves and tactile properties, where which could also be a product, but also aesthetic, in the sense people who can see and not see both can experience it as well. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yes, and yeah, anyone else would like to continue with my question, or we can take up the comments in the chat box?
Yeah, just want to add on that. I mean, yeah, so like, when we have a specific audience in mind, it's not a question of conformity or you know, reducing oneself, but to, you know, but really is a way to find new ways of, you know, modes of engaging. Yeah, just want to add on that.
It's more like including people and not sticking to one set of mindset,
Hmm.
inclusivity.
Yes. Yeah. Should I start taking questions from the chats? I guess yes. Okay. So the first question अविनाश के लिए है यहाँ पे. जनरली आर्टिस्ट अपने अपने काम से बहुत ही जुड़े हुए होते हैं, पॉजिटिव भी होते हैं. कुछ भी उनको कुछ ठेस पहुंचा, किसी ने हाथ लगाया तो काफी सेंसिटिव हो जाता है. तो वैसे कॉन्टेक्स्ट में आप लोगों को जब इनवाइट करते हैं कि आपके कामों के साथ वो हाथ लगाए या फिर एक तरीके से छेड़छाड़ करें उनके विजुअल अपीयरेंसेस से, सो आप कैसे उसका आइडिया से डील करते हो?
एक्चुअली मेरे काम को कोई हाथ लगाए इसलिए मैंने वो अलाउ किया कि लोग आके उसके ऊपर काम करें. तो मैं मेरी तरफ से करूंगा तो एक कहीं पे मैं रुक जाऊंगा कि हाँ मतलब ये फाइनल आउटपुट है मेरा, और काफी कॉन्शियस हो जाऊंगा. लेकिन जब लोग उसके साथ रिएक्ट करेंगे तो मल्टीपल व्यू मिलेंगे. तो मुझे वो चीज इंटरेस्टिंग लगती है थोड़ा कि हाँ मतलब वो कहीं ना कहीं रुक के नहीं, लेकिन एक उसमें भी एक लाइफ हो लोगों के साथ कनेक्ट होके. तो मैं उस तरीके से ज्यादा सोच.
ओके ओके राइट. तो अगला सवाल है अक्षता के लिए. अक्षता, tapestry played a ceremonial and daily life, especially during Renaissance, which again has a strong reference to craftsmanship and the medium today, where a collaboration is required, where artists are more and more using that collaboration, right from the modernist period, even in India. A range of artists have used, architects and artisans as well as painters have used tapestry as a medium to collaborate and bring about their visual imageries. So the question here is, what is your thought of using technical sound, craftsmen and your concept together? So what are the aspects you are looking towards collaboration? So what collaboration in that case would mean?
So yes, I mean, at present also people commission big tapestries in interior houses or like hotels, and it would be great to collaborate with someone from the visual art field, because there is always this maker and artist. There's always a difference people have made between someone who like a craftsman and an artist. So it would be an interesting collaboration between a visual artist, a weaver, and of course the person who commissions it. I think.
No, but yes, Priyashri, please continue.
Entitlement, like when we talk about collaborations, there are many artists who have been actually not using the word collaboration, but they have these factory spaces or so-called work like workshops wherein like she just talked about doership. So sometimes this question arises in my mind, whether the people who are contributing into making this, should they get the title, as in should they also be tagged being one of the artists? Can it be called collaborations? This is an interesting question somebody has raised from the audience, and I wanted you to address it. What do you think about it? Because I know that there are artists in India, and even Anish Kapoor, for example, he's been questioned about this, about the doership. And what would you have to say, Nikhil, about it?
Is it addressed to Nikhil or me? I would like to add a point, like
just something which I have always questioned, and whenever whether it's a Sudarshan Shetty or a Riyaz Komu, I've had many questions, and yes, they have answered it quite effectively. And right now we're talking about craftsmen, so they are not even factory workers; they are actually creators. So I just want to more about the entitlement and tagging them? That's my question. So you, both of you, I'm happy to know both your sides.
So recently there's been a project within Jaipur Rugs Foundation um, where the weaver was making the sketch, he was making the painting and doing it as well. So he was the artist and he was the maker, and the results were really interesting. Like sometimes it was not even a complete sketch. They would just start off with weaving, and like tapestry or rug weaving is something which is like many people also like, it's a collaboration between 2 or 3 weavers as well for one piece. So there was quite like intricate patterns and incomplete or uh, pieces which were not joining but combined together, and it really gave a very nice result. So I think yes, this should be addressed today, and the craftsman is also the artist.
Right. Yeah. Like considering that even a simple image on Google comes with a tag with saying that images might be copyrighted. Perhaps when we start working with artisans, craftsmen who represent a certain lineage or a tradition, the fair use policy should be integral part of any practice. Perhaps that increases the credibility of the artist, whereas also providing a kind of uh, a position where the shortcomings are also shared equally. This is something I speak when in terms of research. Quoting or citing someone becomes very crucial, because if citation is creating a misinterpretation or a different meaning than intended, the onus lies on the person who is being cited. So similarly, if artists are also involving different, and in recent times, more and more artists are inclined towards collaborating and working with as an extended outsourcing of skills. So perhaps if these interpretations are also extended as part of their discourse, it makes much more as an inclusive practice, and also the credibility is shared. And again, it totally depends on the authorship, the ideas of authorship here, whether that the artist is willing to do that or not. Yeah. Okay. It's time for the next question. We can go on with these eternal perennial debates. Yeah. So the question to Mukta here, like the objects you are referring in your still lives, the fruits or the jugs, or all objects which are part of your pictorial language. So do they have any specific meanings to be associated with it? Yes, Mukta, are you there with
Nikki,
us?
I think I think she's not with us because she's having some internet issues and
Okay. Okay.
stuff.
ठीक है, ठीक है. So I move to Darshan now. Darshan, the mythological stories, the old stories which are being presented in a new fashion, and we every now and then we see that even on TV channels as well as different medias, like even for kids, there are niche areas of, or a popular image of a particular mythology is always sorted. Something that hints me to like what is popularly termed as Chota Bheem in recent times for kids. So a mythology is being tweaked, twisted, and reinterpreted in a popular sense here. So, in your way, like, what is the thought of changing the end or the protagonist in this case? How are you convinced with these shifts in the stories of or mythologies, which obviously it means that they are not true, but there could be a sense of fact in them at the same time, or a reference to ethics in them. So how do you refer to these ideas?
सो बेसिकली मिथ्स एंड स्टोरीज है जो वो कुछ ना कुछ रियलिटी का सेंस रखती है. यस, सोसाइटी का सेंस रखती है, बहुत मेटाफोरिकल होती है, डायरेक्ट सेंस में अगर देखा जाए तो बहुत नॉनसेंस लगने लगती है। और ये जो अभी कार्टून वाले हैं, छोटा भीम और ये है, सो आई डोंट नो, बट वो एक कैरेक्टर को बहुत और हीरोइक करते हैं और उनको डिस्प्ले किया जाता है, और ऐसे बहुत जगह पे हो रहा है। सिर्फ छोटा भीम नहीं है, मतलब और भी कैरेक्टर्स है जो आते हैं और चले जाते हैं, तो वो आई थिंक वो कैरेक्टर के साथ खेलते हैं। इतना इंडिपेंडेंस मिलता है हमें हमारे स्टोरीज में, क्योंकि हर एक कल्चर का हर एक स्टोरीज क्रिएट होता है, हर एक फोकटेल्स में अलग अलग कैरेक्टर्स इन्वॉल्व होते हैं जो मेन मिथ से आते हैं। तो जैसे वो हुआ है, अगर लोकल फोकटेल्स में भी अगर महाभारत का कैरेक्टर कोई आ रहा है, तो अभी भी वही चल रहा है कि अगर छोटा भीम में लोकल फोकटेल है जो कार्टून जो बच्चों के लिए, और उसमें एक महाभारत का कैरेक्टर इन्वॉल्व हुआ है कि उसका छोटे बचपन का सीन दिखाएंगे, चलो क्या होता है देखते हैं। तो ये पहले से होते आ रहा है और कुछ नई चीज नहीं है, मतलब ये हो रहा है। हमारे पास जाम्बूर आख्यान है महाराष्ट्र में, जो महाराष्ट्र का फोकटेल है इन रिलेशन विद महाभारत। सो ये हो रहा है और ये चलने ही वाला है, और ऐसा इसमें कुछ अलग चीज नहीं लगता है, और वैसे ही चीजें हो रही है और होने ही वाली है, क्योंकि वो इतना इंस्पायर करती है स्टोरीज मिथ्स कि हमें हमारा एक स्टोरी क्रिएट करने पे मजबूर कर देती है। सो ऐसा है।
राइट, ओके ओके। या काफी बार हम देखते हैं कि जो कैरेक्टर्स जिस तरह से प्रेजेंट होते हैं वो ट्वीक भी हो रहे हैं, एंड हर समय हर समाज अपना अपना एक माइथोलॉजी एस्टेब्लिश करने की कोशिश करता है। इवन द पॉपुलर फिल्म्स और द एक्शन फिल्म्स इन recent times like the Avengers and these set of sci-fi based films also are trying to project a kind of a unified mythology for the world to consume. Perhaps we are in a way also losing our ability to create our own myths or mythologies for ourselves, and perhaps leading on to consumption on a larger scale, which is given to us rather than originating from our own lives. Right. The next question, and perhaps a concluding one, we will take towards Bazik here. Exoticism is a dominant issue that has sought its traces from the colonial discourse until present day post-colonialism. Edward Said's discourse on the representative of the other is still evident. Could you elaborate more in this context as your perception and lens cleaning negate a dialogue of this political issue? Portrait in your work become a geopolitical tool and a sign of identity of exterior self. What is your opinion in this regard, especially for a person who belongs to the Northeast?
Great. I mean,
I think he's facing some network issue.
The lens at which. Hello, am I not audible?
Yeah, now it's clear. Now it's clear.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll repeat. The notion of the other, or the lens at which a place or a location, or in this case a region, like the Northeast has been looked at, has always been from the cultural outsider. Exoticism and also other modes of cultural markers, which is imposition side, has always been the way it has been looked at. So in a way, artists, especially what I'm trying to do is to negate this kind of perceptions. And of course, like perceptions, when you talk about perceptions, it has a very how do I put it? It's about ways of looking, and the gaze has always been directed towards the place. So then the question that I have is like, how do we turn the lens outward? How do we speak from within, and then maybe, shift the center. I identify myself as a socially conscious eccentric, which also is a conscious refusal of a centrally defined axis. So it's always been a way to shift this, notions of the center, the periphery, and where do we, sort of navigate between these, concentric circles. As a, to visualize it, it's kind of like a concentric circle where one moves the center and, sort of like blurs the boundary between these defined parameters, whether it is in terms of identity, whether it is in terms of, regional belonging, cultural markers, identity markers. Yeah.
Yeah, like the debate itself is a pretty complex one, and yeah, it's not easy to come to certain understanding or just respond in a few moments. And I'm sure, like, it's an evolving picture, which eventually, like as I mentioned, like once we start looking at the practices of all North and Eastern artists together, perhaps there would be a better portrait to be viewed, and maybe not in a better in the sense in a positive or negative way, but as a vision itself, how it is shaping. Yeah.
Also, since you invoke, post-colonial studies, like Edward Said, the concept of liminal spaces or liminality is also really important. Even before we discuss about, the paradox and this kind of like, positionality where one assumes different position is also really important, because of course, sometimes we as in I take the position as a Northeasterner or as a Mizo, but sometimes I do tend to to move away from that, and then the ease at which I can assume different multiplicities and different identities and different positions is really crucial to my practice, I guess. Yeah. To belong or unbelong simultaneously at the same time. Yeah.
Right. Yes, Priyashri, you have something to add in?
I was just saying that, something very simple, like, each individual and each person sense of belongingness, of course, is important, but they can be different. Like I always say, in a fruit salad, there's an apple and a peach and a banana, and each one is perfect the way they are. And maybe they may not belong to each other, but they make it sweeter. So it's maybe sounding extremely diabetic at this moment, but to move forward, I think if somebody like me is able to understand it more deeply, I think I'll make peace within myself. I can't say about other people. So just having deep respect for each person and each person's situation in whatever it is now. And I'm not saying accept it, but still finding that peace at that moment, which is, that's all.
Right. Yeah, I think we are moving towards the time for conclusion. Yes, any further responses? And one last question for Rahul here. Like, there are always challenges and problems with working in a digital sphere, and that's about data ownership, which is always a challenged thought. There are so many versions we speak about. Right now, we are being viewed as a version, and I think this also a discourse interestingly comes through John Berger's work, where he cuts out a piece of a Renaissance painting, and I think Masaccio. So here, when we look at imagery and especially your work in the digital reference, so what is this idea? Like, how do you respond to this idea of data ownership? Or how would your consumers, maybe the gallerists or the people, the viewers who are responding to. What is this thought about data ownership?
Um, you mean in the sense how my work would be? Um, uh, I mean, I didn't quite get the question here.
Yeah,
Like,
taken also both in terms of perception as well as storage in tangible ways.
well, I
It's
was
the
reading.
value to it, the intrinsic value of basically possessing and collecting a digital media art. So you can go ahead, Rahul, and then I will respond.
I mean, this ownership question. There was this artist who recently auctioned Beeple, who auctioned his work. He is a digital artist,
BP.
and I don't know if you guys have heard the news or not, but yeah, he did auction. So that's where I came across the term NFT, non-fungible tokens, right? So in fact, it's a concept which is highly appreciated, being appreciated right now, as there is no way a duplicacy can happen if NFT is added to a digital work. It's a non-replicable format of selling your work, and that is a very technical way I've answered it. I've never, like I said before, to be very honest, I never approached my work as something that I would put out for sale or anything. I'm being very honest here, and I just made them as self study and as an exploration of my own self. So I never contemplated this aspect, how a digital. In fact, I was even surprised when Meher pointed out. I gave the option. I told Meher कि मेरे पास जो मैंने जो Instagram पे post करा वही काम है मेरे पास और उसके अलावा तो कुछ नहीं है. She immediately came back and said कि अच्छा ये दो videos हैं मेरे को ऐसा. मैंने कहा okay. So I was in fact pleasantly surprised कि these were very off the off the record kind of a practice which I was doing, and then she highlighted it and she wants to display it. So I said okay. So I mean, for me now, this question, if it is being posed, I can probably think of how, if someone wants to approach it. I feel in fact surprised that my work, my digital work, can be taken up as a
Right.
form of.
Digital work not can be, and it is. It's just that, basically you just need to put a value to everything. And it's not for the sake of yourself, but it's also for the sake of art. And I was very keen to actually have an exhibition only on digital art, which I discussed with Meher, and I said, I just want to do an exhibition on digital art because, like you correctly said, there are artists like Yoko Ono and David Koala and James Turrell, Bharti Kher. All these people are actually making digital art and selling. So yes, there are many ways where you can actually, buy these digital arts and they become valuable because you can do it through usage and publication, and the algorithms are sold. Like there was an algorithm of a digital art sold for 10 years. Then it can be subscription based and it can be data ownership. So Bharti Kher, by the way, sells her works through data ownership. So definitely the future is about digital art, which is opening up because digital art is just another medium. It's like, I look at it like that. When you use electricity to make your art, it is digital art. It's just a simple medium, and there are museums around the world who are now collecting this. So Rahul, a lot of respect to your work, and I really think you're being very humble about it, that you think that we chose, but it was categorically chosen by both of us put together because we think that that's the way forward. And imagine, like, I can just buy your digital work and I can view it on my phone. Just I mean, when I think about it, I'm excited, and I'm already thinking that I'm going to be renovating my space and I'm going to have this really large screen, and I'm going to be purchasing digital art because I'm sure they are well priced today. I'm looking at the commerce parts, guys.
I was just being honest about. I mean, the names that you picked. the names that you handpicked right now, they are like celebrities of the art world, right? So they have the possibilities for everything. I was just being honest about, rather I was putting my vulnerable self out there. I don't like to hide the self-doubt an artist is plagued when
Yeah.
he's experimenting, whether how this work would be received by anyone for that matter. So I just put out my questions and my self-doubt right now, and that was the idea behind doing this. Also, I wanted people to acknowledge the fact that there's no material limitations for me as such, right? So uh, yeah, I mean, right.
Fantastic. We anyways, we'll have this conversation outside this forum, but I look forward to doing more of digital art. And yes, there are editions, I'm sure most of you know, but there can be editions of these digital arts, just like a print, and they are bought and sold securely, and whole lot of things happening in the future, so look forward to. Thank you.
Great. That has opened up a altogether different discourse to this entire idea. And right now, even I would say that I'm claiming this time for me, and this is the moment I own, the digital virtual time. Anyways, jokes apart, it has been a wonderful journey with the Priyashri Art Gallery, Priyashri yourself, Meher, and the entire team of Priyashri. Uh, Getting insights and really like jostling with the ideas of each artist private spaces in a way. Like when we speak about image making, it is always a private space, and which becomes eventually a public imagery to be exchanged and debated about, or whatever the kind of exchanges that occur in that case. So I thank all of you for making this possible, and allowing especially all the artists of the entire series for letting me into your private spaces, and letting me talk whatever I could, rather whatever maybe harsh or uh, dramatic or whatever it was. So I thank you all artists and the team here, and yeah, so that would be the conclusion from my end.
Nikhil, I want to know, like last time I asked Meher what was her experience and highlights of her association with Untitled series. Like, you know, that we are actually at the end of it, and I'm sure there is something cooking up. It's not going to end so soon. There's something more coming up. But I
Right.
want to know, what is it that, you know, you actually, enjoyed, or something which you think came out of it? Because for me it was a very simplistic thought of, you know, involving artists to basically connect to each other in times of pandemic. I didn't have anything very particular or something very philosophical,
Hmm.
my mind. It was just about, you know, starting communication, entering their minds, and also talking about the processes which they undertake, you know, to actually make a thought into a reality, you know, which is always, you know, kind of the like you talked about, what is it that you want your viewer to see, you know? So the viewer is
Hmm.
always wondering that how the hell did this person actually get here? Like, you know, it's about learning, you know, coding in like today's technological world. It's like they've actually done coding, you know, and their works are something which is a reality today. So my thought for it was just like, in, you know, an inside peep into their mind, or their, you know, the found objects or something. What, you know, I wanted to see their studios. Some of them showed us their studios. So the thought came very simple, and
Hmm.
also because there was isolation and there was so much of mental health problems people were going through. So my idea was actually to meet people, interact, and vent out. So but you took it to another level, Nikhil. So I just wanted to know what was your experience.
Well, as an artist myself, and the way as I was graduating from JJ, I thought about moving more towards the theoretical aspect of art, because at in my third and final year, I was more skeptical towards the role of a studio painter. So eventually, whatever the course led me to, and in recent times, I was becoming more and more skeptical about the entire discourse of only contextualizing intellectually, and perhaps the engagement with the viewer or any community per se. The way we would look at any performance, like even the street performers, there is an exchange with their immediate viewers, whether in terms of currency of exchange of some money or in kind. That exchange is totally getting devoid in the current exchanges of art practices. And again, as Bazik mentioned about accessibility, so it is this very accessibility is being challenged more and more when you are intellectualizing it. So perhaps the entire Untitled series has allowed me to mellow down that skepticism, and be assured with that, okay, there is still a localized dialogue which is possible and which can lead to new audiences if the artists themselves take this idea of viewership in their belonging or habitational space, other than besides the mainstream or the conventional gallery spaces what we speak about. Yeah, I think that shift is a significant one, because all these practices are still evolving, nascent, and that itself is a wonderful phase to look at, and that's very assuring. Yes. Please unmute yourself.
Meher, any last minute additions?
Yeah,
We
I
are
think
in
she should summarize, and it's her what do you say, canvas she has put together, so she should summarize it for us.
No,
You know,
I think, yeah.
the most beautiful part was that I had just barely met Meher, and we used to have a lot of communication problems because we were always interacting on phones, and that the bond goes away when you are actually not looking at somebody else speaking. And when this Untitled series basically came up, it was I never thought that we'll actually reach up to the Untitled 10. So and Meher and Ramsha at that time, they were so supportive, and we had a lot of glitches in the beginning, if you remember, Meher. So also dealing with artists, because they were wondering that in the midst of pandemic, in the month of May, I mean, what the hell are these guys doing? They would keep calling Meher and Ramsha and me, asking in awkward times, how are we going to send our works? So actually, it took time for even them to understand that this digital media platform can be so effective. And the VR gallery, oh my God, I can't forget. So my niece was 16 years old. I called her up and said that I'm doing this exhibition on digital media. Do you know a space where how we can show it online? And she's like, oh yeah, I have this free app, which is so slow. And these girls, both Meher and Ramsha, struggled, and now Rusha and I'm sure Afreen struggled with it. But we are jugadis. Indians are jugadis. So जुगाड़ करके हो गया, 10 तक पहुंच गए Meher. Good, congratulations to everybody. And of course, I want to thank the entire team for being so patient with me, because I think very fast and I want everything very fast. And in the time of pandemic, as it is, it's slow, but they were very patient. So I should actually have a gratitude note sent to all of them saying that we did it. So Meher, your take.
Yeah, I think you summarized it very well, Preshi. It went ahead pretty good. This was more or less what was happening. We were juggling through it, and things. I mean, actually, to think about it, the kind of artist and all, like, this is my interest where it comes from. That we got together artists who were just like beginning into the field, and that was really interesting to have these webinars with them and to be constantly in engagement with them, which was again a challenge for me when I moved here to like get in touch with all these artists, and I barely had a phone call with all of them. But yeah, even they were very patient with me. I should thank these people for trusting in me and being positive about showing your works here. And I think, yeah, it went ahead pretty well. And we have a lot of,
We should
I think,
uh, all the facilitators, Urja, Muksha, they are the ones who got us these fabulous artists who were like gems hidden, you know, and I wouldn't have seen them without their support. So if I'm forgetting anybody's name, please do acknowledge their names, Meher. But I remember Urja, I remember Muksha. And who are the other? Who are the other?
Ishita Biswas.
God, that was another level. That's the bookmaking.
Exhibition.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
who I
I think
miss?
we had 3 of them with us.
And Green and yourself put together. So, and yes, it's because of them that they actually, you know, it's like being local, thinking global. And they are the ones who were in touch with most of these brilliant artists who participated and with us. And they are the ones who actually sent their biodatas and their portfolios to us. And we're very fortunate, seriously, very fortunate. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I would also like to thank all the artists who joined with us today, and like, yeah, it was pretty a rough ride to get in touch with all of them and put up the show, but it went ahead pretty well, and I am extremely happy about this bunch that I was able to bring together. And like we were just talking that, you know, like it's all about responding from a personal space and then extending out. And the webinar happened, and this is precisely where it goes, where the discussion can, like, you can have a place for the works in in a space like this. And this is what I'm happy about. So yeah, I think we can conclude on this note. I would say, if anybody wants to add in, we are just getting very emotional and doing all our goodbyes now because it's the last one.
It's really. Thank you, Afreen. Thank you, Rusha. Thank you, Yogisha. Thank you, Nikhil. Oh my God, this wouldn't have happened without you. These amazing, amazing webinars. I hope we have recordings of all. And this will actually be like an archive for the future. I believe it. Because I don't know, anything which I always believe, anything which is truthful is beautiful and it's meaningful. So, and like one of them said that, you know, I'm just being my vulnerable self. So you really need to have courage to be vulnerable. So that itself is a big thing. And the people who have been vulnerable and truthful, you will actually be the fodder for yourself in your probably in your life later, and even for the others who will actually view this webinar, you know, and these recordings. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for this
Okay,
opportunity.
bye, guys. We'll keep saying the thank yous. Thank you so much. I wish we were all together and we could celebrate with a glass of wine or champagne, but maybe, why not? Maybe it will happen one day.
Yes.
In a White Cube gallery. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Bye.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.